My talk is called The Dignity of the Earth. I'll begin by sharing a short poem. I don't know if it qualifies as a poem according to your literature experts here, but I'll share it with you anyway. A mountain is a mountain. It is not bauxite. A river is a river. It is not water. A tree is a tree. It is not timber. A pig is a pig. It is not pork. A cow is a cow. It is not beef. I hope I can make the full meaning of this poem somewhat clearer to you by the end of my talk. As you can tell, I'm in favor of cow protection, but I'm also for a radical change in our attitude to animals, plants, and the natural world in general. The way we treat them actually tells us a lot about who we are becoming. And in a country like this, with such an ancient lore of intimate, literally intimate relationships with plants, animals, and the landscape, we are in danger of a fierce violation, not just of some superficial tradition, but traditions and lore which have maintained us over millennia. And I'm not about to just give up and allow our leaderships, it doesn't matter which one, to just take it away from us in a hurry. I often Google my favorite words or phrases in my writing or my speaking before I share them with an audience, just to make sure I'm not plagiarizing too much. All of us plagiarize. But this is what I did. I Googled dignity of the earth the other day, and would you believe it, almost no entries appeared out of hundreds of thousands. There's dignity of human beings, dignity of nature, dignity of this, dignity of that, but nothing on dignity of the earth. I think there was one evangelist website somewhere in the south of America which had something on it. And I personally feel that human dignity has virtually no meaning unless the earth is accorded due dignity. Today we are being whipped by the elements, as far as I can tell, both from inside in terms of the costs we are paying by way of stress to our health and so on, through the endangered communities in which we now live, and I'm not about to throw that up either, and in terms of how the weather and the climate and the elements are treating us from the outside. So at all three levels, at the individual level, at the community level, and at the species level, humanity is under threat. The planet is quite safe, by the way. The planet is not in trouble. Humanity is under threat. So I want to say something about our relationship to nature and the place of the human imagination in that relationship. Here are some images. I'm going to show you some images from an accident that took place in Noida a few years ago. And they tell their own story. They're very surreal images. And for me, they're actually, whether we like it or not, an appropriate metaphor for the times we live in. So I hope this works. So these two elephants were being taken by the Mahot for a wedding ceremony in UP. And early morning, during rush hour, a container truck, an Indian-style container truck, hit them. One of the elephants died on the spot. And when I saw this image, I was reminded of 1969 when I saw my first movie, Hathi Mere Sathi, and I wept. I actually wept. The second elephant survived, and you will see an image of the second elephant. This is still the first elephant. That to me says everything you need to know about India 2012 or 2014. And this is the warning poster on the wall for us. I don't mean to be unnecessarily alarmist. I think we also need a sense of humor about it. And if we've gotten to the point where we are lifting elephants on cranes like this, somebody somewhere, or maybe a lot of us everywhere, are doing something seriously wrong. And I want us to reflect on that. This is the last mother elephant, and she's, through much more intelligent instinct than human beings have, throwing sand on her wounds in order to make the best of a terrible moment in her destiny. It also reminds me of my first days in America back in 1987. And I was in Boston, and I was taking a course at Harvard University. And one of my professors, a very, very esteemed figure in his field in economics, I shall not name him, asked me in the corridor one day, "So do you still ride elephants in India?" And my pat response to him was, "Yes, we also have parking lots for them." The reason I share this with you is in order to pin down the dominant narrative in this completely crooked, broken world of ours. It's still a very beautiful world, but it's been rendered ugly by forces we do not recognize as ugly, as the real causes of the dilemmas we face. So the premises of his question actually communicate the narrative of what might be called modernization, for want of a better word, let's go with that trite word, and for which today I argue that sustainability and sustainable development is a terrible euphemism. It's actually an accurate euphemism for what it's trying to say, but there's too much space between the hand and the glove, so to speak. I'll come back to this a little later. Many things get lost in today's rhetoric of sustainability. It's almost a technocratic term. It's almost about getting the numbers right, getting the ratios right, timing things right, etc. And I am absolutely convinced, I have no way to show it rationally, but I'm absolutely convinced that if this is the way we will go on thinking, then we've convinced ourselves that something is thinking when it's not. Counting, measuring, numbering is not what thinking is, according to me. Take, for instance, an example of the sort of thing that does not get communicated by using the term sustainability. Our relationship to the animals. Think of the cars we drive. Where do they come from? In the human imagination, where do they come from? They come from Victorias. None of us were around when Victorias were the normal mode of transport for the elites and middle classes of the world. Victorias ran on 4 wheels. Okay? Why did they have 4 wheels? Because they were based on horses, quadrupeds with 4 legs. 3-wheelers came much later. 4-wheelers came before 3-wheelers. Likewise with planes. You can't imagine planes without somebody studying very intelligently the aerodynamics of birds. An average bird, I've noticed in the sky, flies much faster than our Olympic runners can run on Earth. But, we think no end of them, and we think nothing of the birds, right? And so on. Now, it's difficult to keep ecological balance on the planet if the only 2 major institutions in society are the state and the corporation. We have eviscerated communities from their habitats. We have uprooted them culturally, we've uprooted them ecologically, and our leaderships, and I don't make any exceptions here, think nothing of going on doing it because everybody's part of the madness, and if you don't do it, somebody else will do it. You know the rest of it. It results in our extreme vulnerability to the elements, and we don't even notice the patterns that are around us. Let's ask the question, what is nature? It's a very loaded word. Some would say it's a soiled word. For now, I will just say something very, very crude and simple, which is that anyone who lives and breathes in a body is already living in the midst of nature. You might be in this auditorium, you might be in a shopping mall, you might be at an international airport, it doesn't matter. But anyone in a living, breathing body is already right in the middle of nature. No matter how processed the man-made environment might be and how credible and seductive it might be in persuading you of the illusion that, no, this is not in nature, don't believe it for a second. I don't think we do, but it's important to remind us of that. The physiology of our body is already enough. Now, as science knows, and as art knows, and as all good knowledge knows, imagination is a necessary element in our conception of the world. Most of the world we actually do not experience directly for ourselves. We take somebody's word for it, or rather, if we are careful, then we weigh the evidence that they provide us in our minds and we make some sort of judgment. We either accept their view, or we qualify or have questions about their view, or we reject it. And that's how science has moved to this point. The important thing here is that imagination is central to human cognition itself. You cannot get away from it. What it says to me is, in my humbler moments, I feel that human beings have inevitable epistemic limits. And whatever we do and whatever we think we know, there's always something more and something different which we do not know. And that something more and something different might actually be important. There's always the risk that you're ignoring relevant evidence. I come from economics, and those of you who study economics know this. They don't have a lot of respect for evidence in that discipline. The reason why a famous scientist needed to say imagination is more important than knowledge, it should strike us as an important sort of clue on the road. And importantly, cognition and imagination, or maybe imagination and cognition, precede analysis. Before you start reasoning, before you start analyzing, you see in your mind's eye what in Sanskrit is called Triambaka. Now, Triambaka is either open or closed, but however closed it can't be completely closed. So there's some worldview already there on the basis of which we do our reasoning. So which is why one should not make a fetish of reasoning either. Now, to restore the dignity of the earth, you need a rooted, multifaceted ecological imagination of the kind that sustainability just does not give you. It leaves you very crippled, actually. This is threatened today by the fact that our primary modes of cognition and imagination are outside of us. Usually a screen mediates our reception of reality. It could be the media screen, it could be a mobile screen, or it could be a computer screen. And the same image travels into every brain, potentially, right? So there is the danger of what one writer at one of the TEDTalks itself called the danger of a single story, a hegemonic narrative that travels across the planet, and it can travel instantaneously. Like Winston Churchill, I think it was, who said once, lies go halfway around the world before truth gets to put its pants on, So that's the kind of world we live in, heavy propaganda all the time, 24/7. The result is that the obvious is no longer obvious in the information age. And we constantly have to unearth the obvious and to restate it and to express it in all the different seductive, sexy ways so people will think you're saying something different. Old wine in new bottles. Yeah. There's a story from a professor who took his 8-year-old to France many years ago. And they were staying at a friend's farm. And in the morning, the child started shrieking, crying loudly. What was happening was that cattle was being killed. Till that point, his father found out when he spoke to him, till that point, the child was under the impression that cows give beef the way they yield milk. Now, this is not how you build a smarter planet. This is how you create a more stupid society which you can control mentally. I'm stating it very bluntly, but that's the reality, right? If we are going to bring up children in a world in which they encounter beef before they see a cow, we are in deep water, and we better recognize that. And education, since we are at an educational institution, has a profound responsibility in addressing the damage that has been already done to our cognition. So to cut a long story short, and especially in a developing country, it needs to be said, we live with a universal urbanization of the mind. Even in the most local of villages, let alone in the global village, children are growing up with aspirational consumption, right? So you're either today in the world an actual consumer or an aspirational consumer, and it's the invasive genius of advertising which has created consumers out of human beings everywhere. So we rarely have access to the real thing. It's usually a whole sequence of images which narrate the world to us. And I'm saying that it's easier to intercept cancer at stage 2 than at stage 4. Towards the end, I want to say that we have no alternative but to resume and I use that verb very, very precisely and advisedly, to resume our relationship to the natural world. The moment you say return to the natural world, people say, no, you can't return, you can't go back, the only way is forward. And the answer I have for them is this. So tell me if you can't see this. The normal view is you start around 1750 or something when the Industrial Revolution sets off, and you make great progress, and by 2000 you're here. This is what scientists call the arrow of time. Now, could it be that this is how things actually move, and that this point may repeat itself with some variations, hopefully with less tragedies and farces.
We have our fourth speaker with us now.
Over time. So that's the kind of image I have in mind mentally when I speak of a return to nature. That's why I said we have to resume our relationship to the natural world. Forget about conquering nature. You will never succeed. You will always be defeated. Think about a dialogue. Think about listening more than anything else. You can't argue with supermarkets and expressways, but the elements are arguing with them and are winning every single time they win, but we don't notice. We don't interpret it in the right way. One story at the end, and hopefully I will still keep to the TED commandments while I do it. Vishnu is getting bored in his village, and he calls for Garuda. So Garuda is called, and he says, take me to some beautiful place. I'm sick and tired of this dirty, messy, stinky village. So Garuda flies him over a beautiful meadow, which takes some weeks to reach. He says, no, let's keep going. This is beautiful, but there are places more beautiful, I'm sure. And a little ahead, some months later, they reach a forest, a rainforest. Says, wow, this is lovely. Let's go down here. Says, no. Let's keep going. This is getting better and better. After some years, they reach the Himalayas, and Garuda says, what could be more beautiful, my lord? And Vishnu says, no, the Himalayas go on for hundreds of miles. Let's keep going. Finally, the desert is glimpsed, and Vishnu says, turn around. This is scary. He turns around, says, where should we alight? And Himalayas, the rainforest, or the meadow? He says, no, go all the way back to the village. That's the best place on earth. He says, why did we come all this way to go back? He said, sometimes you have to go very far from home to realize that you have to return home. So that is my image of a return to nature. That's my image of resumption of our relationship to it. Thank you very much for listening.